Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday. We got a lot to talk about on today's show, as we normally do. But before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys to become part of the show. Make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip for donations and tips. And that basically, like I said, it makes you a part of the show. It gets your comment highlighted in the live broadcast. I talk about it. I address it. And, yeah, it makes you part of the show. And, again, it's a great way to get involved with it. And, it helps make the show better, more lively, more interactive between myself and you guys, the viewers. So make sure to do that. And, so with that, let's get right into what we're going to talk about today. So to start off the show, we are going to recap yesterday's game between the Bengals and the 49ers. Sorry, throat was acting up there. We're going to recap the Bengals and the 49ers game. Now the Niners have lost 3 in a row. So we'll get into that in a second. We'll recap all the early window games from Week 8. And then in the third part of the show, we will recap the rest of the late window games. And then to conclude the show, we will go over, we will preview tonight's game between the Raiders and the Lions. So with that, let's get right into the first part of the show, which is talking about this game yesterday between the Bengals and the 49ers. And, going into this game, the Niners have lost, their last 2 games. The Bengals coming off of a bye. And this is a game that the Niners had to win to get themselves back on track. And the Bengals dominated this game. They really did. They forced Brock Purdy to turn the ball over. Again, he threw some interceptions. He fumbled towards the end of the game as well. And Joe Burrow looked really good. The offense for the Bengals looked really good. And the other thing, too, is, and I talked about it when I previewed this game on Friday, the Bengals were one of the worst teams running the football in the NFL. I think they were dead last in the NFL in rushing yards per game. And they were able to run the football effectively. Joe Mixon had a good game, 16 carries for 87 yards and a touchdown. But also, here's the thing, too. So with Joe Burrow, 283 passing yards, 28 to 32. It was nearly perfect. 3 touchdowns to no picks. He was sacked a few times in this game. But Joe Burrow was their second leading rusher. He had 6 carries for 43 yards. And that's big in the sense that his calf is healthy, or it's getting there. I think that's huge, because that just goes to show you that the Bengals, if he's right, the Bengals are going to be dangerous moving forward. And that's why I liked them to still win the division, even though, they're still well, now they're tied for second place with the Browns and the Steelers. Everybody's still a game and a half back of the Ravens. Nobody gained ground from the Ravens. They beat the Cardinals yesterday. And I'll talk about that game in the third part of the show, because there's something I need to talk about regarding the spread pool. And by the way, did very good in the spreads this week. Did very good with predictions this week. We went against the grain in a lot of the games, but we were able to rebound after a rough couple of weeks. So at least I could show you guys that I could make good predictions for once. But so going back to this game though, looking at the stats for the receivers, Jamar Chase was targeted 12 times. He had 10 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown. So he had a big game, and he's been starting to get it going. T. Higgins, 5 receptions for 69 yards. Tyler Boyd, 3 receptions for 40 yards and a touchdown. And, the Bengals looked really good in this game. And then as for the Niners, Brock Purdy 365 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, also had the fumble at the end of the game. He actually ended up being their leading rusher. He had 57 yards rushing. McCaffrey had 54 and a touchdown, so he extended his touchdown streak. Also had a receiving touchdown in this game. George Kittle had 9 receptions for 149 yards. Brandon Ayuk had 5 for 109. McCaffrey 6 for 64. And the receiving touchdown, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, the Bengals dominated this game from start to finish. And, yeah, I mean, as for the Niners, like, it's not looking good right now. It's very concerning right now. On the first, so we'll go through like the possessions quarter by quarter. So in the first quarter, the Niners started off with the ball. They punted. Bengals went right down the field on their first drive. 10 plays, 85 yards, over 4.5 minutes. And, yeah, that was the touchdown to Boyd to start off the game. Then the Niners actually did answer. 8 plays, 75 yards. They answered with a Christian McCaffrey touchdown. So you were like, okay, I mean, this game is going to be back and forth. And then the Bengals again, 6 plays, 58 yards, 3 minutes and 19 seconds. They scored another touchdown, and that was to Osivas, or however you pronounce it. Eosivas, I think that's how you pronounce it. Iosivas. I really apologize for the pronunciation of some of these guys, but yeah, so he got, I think that was his second NFL touchdown, because he had one in one of the games in the previous week. But yeah, so Bengals' first 2 drives for them in this game, they had touchdowns. And then the Niners, they punted on their next possession. And then the Bengals then went down the field, 11 plays, 48 yards, almost 6.5 minutes. But McPherson missed the field goal. Then the Niners answered with the field goal. So it was 14-10. Bengals ended up fumbling towards the end of the first half, but the Niners didn't capitalize on that. Bengals opened up the second half with a field goal. Then both teams punted. Then Brock Purdy threw a pick. Bengals punted on the next possession. And then Brock Purdy, the very next play on the Niners' next drive, throws a pick. Bengals answer with a touchdown. That was to Jamar Chase. And then the Niners did answer with a touchdown of their own. Brock Purdy connected with Christian McCaffrey. So it was a 1-score game. Then the Bengals touchdown. That was Joe Mixon's touchdown, so that put them up by 2 scores. Then the Niners fumbled. Purdy fumbled. And then, yeah, that was pretty much it. But the Bengals looked like a Super Bowl contender in that game. And listen, with Joe Burrow running the football, I think that calf is getting healthy. And if that's the case, I mean, they are going to be a very dangerous team moving forward. And especially now because Jamar Chase has started to get it going as well. Bengals are dangerous. Their defense is good. They ran the football well in this game. And the receivers now, you got everybody back because I know Higgins missed, some games with injury as well. And listen, I said also the key to this game is the offensive line being able to hold up against the Niners front. Now, Burrow got sacked a few times, but, he found his receivers when he had to. Niners back end is not good. Their secondary really is not that good. That is the Achilles heel of their defense. And yeah, it's not good. Now they've lost 3 in a row. They're still missing Trent Williams, no Deebo Samuel, and the biggest concern really is the fact that Brock Purdy is turning the ball over now. I mean, 2 more interceptions, a fumble. That's not good. And at one point the Niners were looked at as Super Bowl favorites, the favorites in the NFC, and each week now that goes by, I mean it's changed. It really has, because they don't look good right now. And I mean, listen, Brock Purdy threw for 365, and there was a couple of big plays, a couple of good throws that he made, but he's turning the ball over now. And now they're 5-3, and believe it or not, they actually are a wild card team now. The Seahawks have now surpassed them with their win over the Browns. They're in first place in the NFC West. which is crazy now to think about. Now, I don't think that's going to last. I think the Niners are going to get right. Because, again, like, teams are going to go through this. And right now, they're in a little bit of a funk. But I think they're going to get out of it. And I think they will ultimately win the division. Now, in terms of them being the top seed in the NFC, I think you got to look at the Eagles right now as, being the favorites to get home field throughout the playoffs once again. Because the Niners are getting set back. And the Niners are going to go on the road and play Philly later in the year. And, yeah, the way the last couple of weeks have gone, I mean, you got to like the Eagles in that game. You do. It's going to be at home. But we got some time before then. But right now, the Niners, I mean, they got to get right. And their defense, Brock Purdy turning the ball over and their defense not playing well these last few weeks, yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. It's not. It really isn't just Brock Purdy. It's the defense too. I don't know what's going on with the defense, but they got some things they got to figure out. But for the Bengals, they're trending up. That's a team that is trending up right now, and they are going to be trending up in the power rankings when those come out this week. So, but you got to like what you're seeing from them. I mean, also being able to run the football against the Niners, which is not easy, and when you're not a good rushing team, and they were able to do that. I think that in total they had like 134 yards. So, yeah, I mean, and now they got a big game coming up next Sunday night against the Bills at home. That's going to be a great game. Looking forward to that. But I mean, right now I kind of favor the Bengals a little bit in that game, leaning towards them because the Bills offensively don't look right. Or they don't look right. They're inconsistent right now on offense. But yeah, that bye week really helped for the Bengals. It really did, because that's the team that they're supposed to be. And they got off to a rough start. And listen, I kind of got called out in the comments section last week because I said that I liked them over the Ravens to win the division. But yeah, I mean, they look really good. They look really good. So right now you got two teams going in different directions at the moment when you're talking about this game. But like I said, I think the Niners are eventually going to get right. It's just right now they're in a funk. That's they got to get guys back healthy. But again, like everybody talking about Brock Purdy being a system quarterback, he's missing his left tackle, he's missing Deebo Samuel. See what he's really made of, and he's turned the ball over in recent weeks. And that's not good. That is not good. So, we'll see. I mean, the Niners go on a bye, so you're hoping you get Trent Williams back, you get Deebo back, and then, you're off and running again. But for the people that, have been criticizing Brock Purdy, they kind of have a case right now because he's not playing how he was playing at the beginning of the year. And the Niners as a team, I mean, the defense is just, for the last 2 weeks, what's going on? So, a rough few weeks for the Niners. Hopefully the bye week, they can come out and they're back to how they were to start the year. Because I still look at them as a Super Bowl contender. I just think it's one of those rough stretches that they just got to deal with. But it's weird that Seattle is now in first place in that division. I think right now Seattle's the 2 seed in the NFC. Or let's see. Actually, yeah, they are, because they have the tiebreaker over the Lions because they beat the Lions this year. Yeah. Let me just double check. Yeah, right now they got the 2 seed. Yep. That's really weird. But and not to discredit Seattle. Seattle's a good team. But I mean, I think the 49ers are still better than them. So, but we'll see what happens. But like I said, I think the Niners are going to get right. So with that, we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we are going to recap all of the early window games. So I'll talk about all of them. We'll get into Giants and Jets because that game was something. So that's what we will do when we come back from our first break. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to recap all of the early window games from yesterday. So let's see. Let's start off with Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans. So that was one of the games. So the Titans were a plus 2.5 underdog at home against the Falcons, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take the Titans. They're at home. The Falcons, I just don't trust them on the road. So we'll see what happens. Because I really was like thinking, should I take the Falcons? But because I've been doing so bad in the spreads lately, I'm like, I gotta go against the grain on some of these, and that paid off. That paid off because the Titans ended up winning 28-23. Will Levis went 19 of 29, 238 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had a great debut, and he's actually the second Titans quarterback to throw 4 touchdown passes in his debut since Marcus Mariota back in 2015. And I think that was the game against the Bucs. Yeah, in his debut. Mariota versus Winston, and yeah. So he had a great game. And 3 of those touchdowns actually were to DeAndre Hopkins, who had a big game. 4 receptions for 128 yards. And, 3 touchdowns. And Westbrook-Akine, he had the other touchdown. That was his only reception of the game. And Derrick Henry, 22 carries for 101 yards. So he had a good game. Desmond Ridder actually, I think he got hurt in this game, but he also, he essentially, Heineke had to finish the game. He went 12 of 21, 175 yards and a touchdown. I think moving forward, I think you got to give Heineke a shot because Desmond Ridder just has not been good this year. He's kind of holding the Falcons back because the Falcons have a good roster. What they're missing is a quarterback. Excuse me. But Bijan Robinson, he had 11 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown in this game. Cordero Hodge, he actually ended up being the leading receiver in this game for the Falcons. He had 3 receptions for 75 yards. Scotty Miller had their touchdown reception in this game. But yeah, an impressive debut for Will Levis. And listen, I think you got to use him as the quarterback moving forward. We know what Ryan Tannehill is, and he could be somebody that's on the move possibly with the trade deadline looming tomorrow. And I think got to roll with him. And listen, this is a guy that got a lot of criticism when he was drafted. And, for at least one game, he went out and proved the doubters wrong. Obviously, I think he was the last quarterback he was the last quarterback taken among the big names. And played really well. So, congrats to him on his first career win. And the Titans on Thursday, they will be playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. That'll be the Thursday night game. So actually, we'll go right into the Steelers game. So they played the Jags yesterday. A lot of bad weather in a lot of these games yesterday, and this was a prime example of that. Jags improved to 6-2. They got the win 20-10 over the Steelers. Steelers now dropped to 4-3 on the season. Kenny Pickett got injured in this game. So Mitchell Trubisky finished it off, and he had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions in this game. Trubisky did. Really did not run the football well. The Steelers, 70 yards rushing. That's just not going to get it done. Deontay Johnson ended up being their leading receiver with 85 yards. George Pickens only had 1 reception for 22 yards, but that was for a touchdown. That was the Steelers' only touchdown in this game. Trevor Lawrence, 24-32, 292 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Travis Etienne had 24 carries for 79 yards. Also had a receiving touchdown in this game. So he had a great game. Evan Ingram was their leading receiver. He had 10 receptions for 88 yards. He actually was targeted 10 times, so he caught all those targets. Calvin Ridley had a bounce-back game, 6 receptions for 83 yards. Christian Kirk had 4 for 46. So, yeah, it was an ugly game with the weather, but the Jags, they continue to roll. They're 6-2. And listen, they have now won 5 in a row. And they're on a bye, and then they come out of the bye to play a home game against the 49ers. So that's going to be a game to definitely pay attention to in a couple of weeks. So, yeah. But the Steelers, they play on Thursday against the Titans. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, we might be seeing Trubisky versus Will Levis. And, yeah, so that might be a might want to bet the under in that game. So, yeah, those are those 2 games. All right, so we'll get into the Vikings and the Packers. So the Vikings got the win. They got back to 500. They're 24. They won 24-10. Packers dropped to 2-5. But the big story here is Kirk Cousins left the game. He ended up tearing his Achilles. So he is going to be out for the rest of the season. And it's just devastating news there because he was having a great season. It was a contract year. The Vikings were playing better football when it looked like it was going to be a lost season for them. And now it officially is because the Vikings now are going nowhere. And it really stinks because they're 4-4, and you know that's a team that could definitely make the wild card, but they really don't have a chance now with Kirk Cousins being out, and you're still missing Justin Jefferson. Running the football has kind of been a problem for them. So, yeah, that's just devastating news there. And he had a good game, 23-31, 274 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jaron Hall ended up finishing the game. And Nick Mullins, they still have on their roster, but he's not cleared off of IR until next week or the following week. So he's probably going to have to start against the Falcons this upcoming week. And the Vikings, really didn't run the ball. They only ran the ball for 62 yards. KJ Osborne actually was their leading receiver. He had 99 yards receiving. Hawkinson, 88 yards receiving on a touchdown. Addison had another touchdown. He had 82 yards receiving. And, yeah, the Vikings get back to 500, but they're going to be out without their starting quarterback moving forward. And then as for the Packers, Jordan Love right now looks like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. The Packers got off to a slow start. They only scored 3 points in the first half. They did score a touchdown. They had their chances to score points. I mean, they got into the red zone a few times, and they could have made this game closer, but they just couldn't, get a touch. They couldn't get any points off of that. Jordan Love ended up being their leading rusher. He had 34 yards rushing. He was their leading rusher. Aaron Jones only had 29 yards rushing. A.J. Dillon had 11. Jaden Reed, he's continued to look like a little bit of a bright spot for them. He's got 83 yards receiving yesterday. A.J. Dillon, 41. Christian Watson, 33. Romeo Doubs had a touchdown. The only touchdown in this game for the Packers, he had 18 yards receiving. But, Christian Watson hasn't had one of those going nuclear games yet. The Raiders game, he had 3 receptions for 91 yards. But other than that, he really has not done much since he's come back from injury. But it's because the Packers' offense is not good. It might be the worst in football, really. Actually, it's one of the worst in football. We know what's worse than that, and we'll get into that in a second. But, yeah, Packers look really bad. I said they could have been a wild card team possibly, but, the way Jordan Love's been playing these last few weeks, they might win 3 or 4 games this year. And on their schedule, you got the Rams at the Steelers, home against the Chargers, the Lions, the Chiefs, at the Giants, Bucks, at Panthers, at Vikings, home against the Bears. Right now I see a lot of losses there. And listen, the Packers had they had stability for the last 20 years with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, but this is new territory for him. So, so the Vikings, they get the win. Packers drop to 2-5 now, and they have now lost 4 in a row. So, and they could very easily be 1-6 because they should have lost to the Saints. So, we still got a lot of games to run through, so we'll run through them quickly. During the week, I'll go into more detail with some of them, but we're we got only 5 minutes left here in this segment. So, we got the Jets and the Giants. We'll get into that now. The Giants have the worst offense in football. Tyrod Taylor ended up getting hurt in this game, so Tommy DeVito had to come in, and he went 2 for 7 for -1 yards. The Giants in total had 7 passing yards. I never thought I would see that in an NFL game, but yeah, here we are. Saquon Barkley, he had 36 carries for 128 yards, so he had a good game. Matt Breida and Darren Waller, who actually got hurt in this game, they were the leading receivers, 4 yards. The Jets, they weren't much better on offense. I mean, they only ran the ball for 58 yards. Zach Wilson was 17 of 36 for 240 and a touchdown, and that was off of Breece Hall, who had that great touchdown reception, which that was all him. Giants just bad tackling on that play. And the Giants, again, special teams was rough. Graham Gano missed a few field goals. The one at the end of the game was crucial because then the Jets, 4 plays, 58 yards. They made it down the field in 24 seconds, got into field goal range. Greg Zuerlein kicks the field goal, ties the game at 10, and the Jets won in overtime. Zach Wilson, 29 yards to Garrett Wilson, and then 29 yards to Allen Lazard. I mean, the Giants' defense played well the entire game. I mean, they started off the game sacking Zach Wilson and getting a turnover. And, they got a field goal out of it, but, ultimately the Giants, and Tommy DeVito did have a rushing touchdown in this game, but ultimately the Giants, they look like the worst offense in football. And now they got their backup hurt. So, yeah. The Jets, they improved to 4-3. They play the Chargers next Monday night, so that's definitely something to watch as they try to, get into the playoffs. Now they're 4-3. That was a big win for them. I mean, that would have been so bad if they lost. And they should have lost. The Giants should have won this game, but that was a typical Giant loss. All right, so we got a few minutes here. So the Panthers actually picked up their first win of the season, improving to 1-6. Bryce Young defeating C.J. Stroud. That was the final score of 15-13. So congrats to the Panthers on getting their first win. And that was a game I got right. I picked the Panthers with the spread. I think I still said I had the Texans winning. But the Panthers picked up their first win. Cowboys were all over the Rams, 43-20. And that line kept moving up. And I said, you know what? I am not going to do it. Because that was another game where I was like, I want to pick the Rams. I mean, they're getting 6.5. Dallas has looked inconsistent, but I was like, you know what? Dallas is at home. They play well at home. I'm going to leave it. And thank God I did, because this game was over after the first quarter. 17-3 after the first quarter. Dallas dominated this game. CeeDee Lamb was great. Dak was solid. They're still not running the football that well. Obviously, Tony Pollard had that bad injury last year in the playoffs. So I think that's part of the reason why he hasn't been as explosive as he was last year. So, they're still not running the football great. But, I mean, CeeDee Lamb, 12 receptions for 158 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was awesome in this game. Matthew Stafford got banged up in this game. He didn't finish the game, so we'll keep our eyes on that moving forward. But Cowboys improved to 5-2. Rams dropped to 3-5. The Dolphins, 31-17 over the Patriots. They continue their dominance against them. The Patriots made it interesting. They hung around in this game, but Dolphins ultimately won. Eagles comeback win against the Commanders. Commanders really play them tough. Jalen Hurts, 319 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no picks. A.J. Brown, 8 receptions for 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. Julio Jones actually got his first touchdown in this game. So Eagles continue to roll. They're 7-1. Actually, the Commanders were able to stop the tush push, which was surprising. And the Eagles fumbled at the goal line. So, Eagles improved to 7-1. And then lastly, we get into the Saints and the Colts. Saints finally won a game. I picked the Saints. I'm like, they got to win this week, and they did that. 38-27 over the Colts, so they improved to 4-4. And that NFC South, man, I really don't know what to say about that. So right before we go into our second break, I just want to remind you guys to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show. That highlights your comment. I address it on the live broadcast, and it's a great way to interact with me, the host, and to recognize your comment. So make sure to do that going forward during my live shows. We greatly appreciate it here. But yeah, so with that, we are going to take our second break of the show, and then when we come back, I will recap the late window games from Sunday. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to now recap the late window games for Sunday. Obviously, we did the Bengals and the Niners already to start off the show. So let's get into it. Let's start off with the Browns and the Seahawks. Browns are coming in at 4-2. Seahawks also coming in at 4-2 as well. And the Seahawks, after the first quarter, were up 17-7. The Browns started off the game. They punted. Seahawks in 8 plays, 80 yards, almost 4 minutes. They went down the field. Bobo had another touchdown in this game. So that got the Seahawks started. So it was 7-0. Then the Browns fumbled, and then the Seahawks capitalized with another touchdown. Geno Smith connected with Tyler Lockett. So it was 14-0. Then the Browns went down the field, 4 plays, 75 yards. And they got a touchdown. P.J. Walker connected with David Njoku. So it was 14-7. Then the Seahawks answered with a field goal. 6 plays, 62-yard drive. And then the Browns, once again, a turnover. P.J. Walker throwing an interception. So, yeah, 17-7 after the first quarter. And you're thinking, yeah, the Seahawks are going to dominate this game. They're wearing those sick uniforms, the throwbacks. Love those uniforms. They were awesome. And we go into the second quarter. Browns, the Seahawks punted to start the second quarter. Browns, they answered with a touchdown. P.J. Walker, Kareem Hunt, 1-yard touchdown. Then next 2 possessions, both teams punted. Seahawks, Geno Smith threw a pick, and that was the end of the first half. Then the Browns tied the game on a field goal. Seahawks punted to start the second half. Browns tied the game on a field goal. Geno Smith another pick. Browns capitalized with a field goal. Then the next 2 drives were punts. Then Seahawks punted. P.J. Walker threw a pick, and that was really critical at the end of the game. Seahawks capitalized with a touchdown. Geno Smith connected with Jackson Smith and Jigba. So back-to-back weeks, he's now scored a touchdown. And ultimately, the Seahawks won 24-20. And yeah, I mean they went pretty much scoreless the entire game. They didn't score in the second or the third quarter. They scored 17 in the first, and then they scored their touchdown in the fourth, and they ended up winning, and they're 5-2. And they are in first place in the NFC West, which is just crazy to say, because I just did not think that was going to happen at this point in the season. But here we are. And the Browns drop a tough game. They dropped to 4-3 now on the season. So everybody in the AFC North, outside of the Ravens, are tied now for second place. So. And speaking of the AFC North, let's get into the Ravens and the Cardinals. So, I thought I had this game won in my spread pool. Ravens were up 31-15. I was feeling really good. Gus Edwards, 3 rushing touchdowns in this game, 80 yards rushing. Lamar Jackson, 18 of 27, 157 yards and a touchdown. So he really didn't have his best game. The Ravens were kind of off in this game. Gus Edwards was easily the MVP yesterday for them on offense. Justice Hill and Mark Andrews were tied for 40 receiving yards. Mark Andrews had a touchdown in this game. But yeah, the Ravens kind of struggled offensively in this game. But, they won the game. They forced some turnovers in this game as well. But, yeah, so it was 31-15. So the Ravens started off the fourth quarter with a field goal. So they were up 24-7 in the fourth quarter. Cardinals answered with a touchdown, got the 2. So it was 24-15. Then the Ravens answered. They went up 31-15. Now, I was in sole possession of first place in my spread pool. So then the Cardinals, on their drive, after the Ravens got the touchdown, Gus Edwards' third touchdown, they got a touchdown. That was to Trey McBride. They went 10 plays, 75 yards, a minute and 37. And, it was Trey, right? It was Trey McBride. Oh, no, this was to Marquise Brown. I think McBride had a touchdown in this game. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he actually had a really good game. 10 receptions for 95 yards and a touchdown. For fantasy purposes, that was great. Because I had him in a few leagues. I picked him up, and he was great. Marquise Brown had 6 for 33 and a touchdown. So they get the touchdown. Now, I'm like, just don't get the 2-point conversion because then the Ravens will still be covering. They didn't get the 2. So now they go for the onside kick. And I'm like, what are the odds of that? It is very hard to recover an onside kick. Now, it has happened, of course, many times. But I don't think it's going to happen. And what happens? The Cardinals recover the onside kick. They get into field goal range. Prater at first misses the field goal, but the Ravens called timeout to ice him. So what does he do? He kicks it again. And it looks like it's going to go wide left, but it stays in, goes in, and the Ravens ended up only winning by 7. So I have no chance of winning the week in my spread pool. I still have a chance, though, to win in the one that I've been doing for a decade. But it's going to come down to a tiebreaker. And I'll explain that when I preview the Lions-Ravens game. I mean, the Lions-Raiders game. So, yeah, the Ravens, I was not happy yesterday. Because I have never won a week in all my years of doing spread pools. I did win. I came in second place and third place in both spread pools last year, but I have never won a week. And I'm trying, after all these years, to end that. And I thought Thursday's loss was bad with the Bills. The backdoor against the Bucs backdooring against the Bills was bad. This might have been the worst backdoor cover that I've ever had to deal with in all my years. Seriously. I mean, the Cardinals in the fourth quarter, they scored 17 points. Ravens were up 24-7. But you know what? The Ravens, they improved to 6-2. Cardinals dropped to 1-7. Kyler Murray actually might be playing soon. Yeah, he was a full participant in practice, but he's going to be held out at least one more week, and then they might bring him back. Josh Dobbs, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks yesterday, 208 passing yards, 25 of 37. DeMarcado was their leading rusher, and McBride was their leading receiver. So, yeah, I mean, the Cardinals, they were pretty much getting dominated this whole game. And listen, like, ever since that win against the Cowboys, like, it really went downhill. Because they really just, I mean, they've been playing better teams. And they just, then they play the Browns in Cleveland next week. Home against Atlanta, which actually is winnable. So, yeah, I mean, right now, they got one of the worst records in football. So, you got Kyler coming back, so we'll see what they do with that. if he plays. Obviously they don't want to bring him back when he's playing, to go up against the Browns, who have a really good defense, which hasn't looked really good the last couple of weeks. But yeah, so we'll keep a close eye on that moving forward. So then we'll get into the Chiefs and the Broncos now. So a couple weeks ago, obviously, these two teams met in Arrowhead. I picked the Broncos to cover. They didn't do that. So this week I was like, all right, well, I'm going to take the Chiefs. And what happened? Broncos won 24-9. The Chiefs were awful in this game. Turnovers were a problem. Mahomes had 2 picks. They fumbled the ball a couple of times. Sky Moore dropped a touchdown. Now, Mahomes also was coming off of having the flu, which I didn't know until, yesterday, because he had it really bad, leading into the game. But he felt better for the game, but he was bad. And this was his first loss against the Broncos. The Broncos finally snapped that losing streak against the Chiefs. The last time they won, it was 2015 against when Peyton Manning was the quarterback. So, the Chiefs just were awful in this game. Kelsey, of course, was their leading receiver. They really didn't run the ball. They only ran the ball for 62 yards. Isaiah Pacheco was their leading rusher. As for the Broncos, Russell Wilson had 3 touchdowns, only passed for 114 yards. Javonte Williams had 85 yards rushing. The Broncos as a team ran for the ball for 153 yards. Jerry Jeudy had 2 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown. Sutton had a touchdown in this game. Javonte Williams had a receiving touchdown in this game as well. Yeah, Broncos improved to 3-5. And suddenly they don't look like the worst team in football. The defense, played well. I mean, they cashed in on the Mahomes turnovers and, guys fumbling. It's just a mess. It was just a mess. This is a very bad loss for the Chiefs. But are we worried about them? I mean, I'm still going to say no. And right before I got on, I was watching TV and, talking about, they were talking about how the Chiefs have at least one of these losses every single year. And it's true. And this was it. Bad weather. Mahomes is sick. Coming off of the flu. But it's those games though. It just makes you wonder why they happen. Just nothing went right for the Chiefs in this game. Every time you thought that they were going to get it going and they were going to come back, just that something happened. And yeah, I mean, this was a bad loss for them. They're 6-2. I mean, they're still going to win this division. They're going to be one of the top seeds. I'm not worried, but this is the bad Chiefs. This is a bad Chiefs game because we've seen this. And it's like I said, every time you thought they got a drive going, something would happen. So the Broncos improved to 3-5. Obviously, I still don't look at them as a very good team, but now you're 3-5. I mean, it looked like you were gonna have one of the worst records in the NFL, and you might end up finishing with the more respectable record now. So we'll see. But yeah, so that's the recap for that game. And then last night's Sunday night game, I mean, the Chargers dominated the Bears, which you figured that was going to happen. I did, honestly. Because, I mean, listen, the spread was a lot. Everybody's like, I take the Bears. I mean, the Chargers haven't been that good this year and all this, and Herbert hasn't looked good. And Chargers dominated. They did. And listen, the Bears had their opportunities. They really did. I mean, Tyson Bagent opened up the game with that big throw, that long pass to Darnell Mooney. They didn't cash in. They didn't get any points out of that. And yeah, he finished the game with 232 passing yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. They couldn't run the ball. They were trailing pretty much the whole game. Cole Kmet actually ended up being their leading receiver. He caught all of his targets, 10 of them, for 79 yards. And then as for the Chargers, Justin Herbert was great, 31 of 40, 298, 3 touchdowns, no picks. They really didn't run the ball. Austin Eckler was the leading receiver. He had 94 yards receiving and a touchdown. Keenan Allen had 69. And yeah, Chargers win. They improved to 3-4, and they play the Jets next week on Monday Night Football. So we'll see how that game goes. But yeah, that's pretty much it with all the recaps. So with that, we are going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, we will now preview the Raiders-Lions game for tonight. And that will wrap up the show for today. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to now preview tonight's game between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Detroit Lions. Obviously, both of these teams are coming off of blowout losses. Last week, the Raiders losing to the Bears 30-12, and the Lions losing to the Ravens 38-6. Now, for this game, I expect the Lions to win this game pretty easily, you would think. And quick thing with the spread pool. So I can win the big one, the bigger one that I'm in. I can win the week. But what I need is for this game to be a final score that adds up to either to 52 or over. That's what it has to be. And you're probably thinking that is way too high. Because what's the over-under? Does it have it on here? Let's see. So right now the over-under is 46.5. Yeah, so not looking good right now. Now, that doesn't mean... Now, listen, it could go higher. Because, listen, the Lions could score a lot of points. Raiders can get some garbage points towards the end. Listen, all I need is a final score of, 34 to 20. Can we get that? I think that's doable, right? I could see that happening. Jimmy Garoppolo will play in this game, so that's good to get him back, even though he's a guy that just keeps getting hurt. And I feel bad for the guy, I really do. He's always getting hurt. And listen, I think the Lions at home coming off of a loss like that, the Raiders are not a good team. The Lions are a much better team than the Raiders. They're at home. They should win this game pretty handily. So I'm going to say the final score is going to be 34-20. I'm picking with my heart in terms of the final score because I don't know if it's going to be that. But they'll win and cover the spread. And maybe for the first time in my life, I will win one of these weeks in these spread pools that I've been doing. And I got 11 games right. So listen, I kept making fun of myself because my predictions were really bad. But this week was my best week. And hopefully that continues and this isn't just an outlier. But let's kind of compare the stats between the two teams. In terms of their offense, the Lions, they are ranked much higher in all the offensive categories than the Raiders are. The Raiders actually are 32nd in rushing, averaging 68.6 rushing yards per game. Lions are 10th, averaging 118.4. Passing yards, Raiders are averaging 231.9, which is 18th in the NFL. And the Lions are averaging 271.7, which is 5th. And then points, Niners are top 10, they're 8th, averaging 24.9. Raiders are averaging 16, which is 30th in the NFL. And then on defense, Raiders actually, believe it or not, are top 5 in against the pass. They're giving up an average of 199.6 passing yards per game. They also have gone up against Jordan Love and Tyson Bagent. And Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson. Well, even though Russell Wilson actually has a decent amount of passing yards this year. But they went up against Josh Allen and Herbert. So I guess it's kind of but still, you got to respect it, The Lions actually are 22nd against the pass. They are giving up an average of 258.7 passing yards per game. Then against the run, Lions are really good against the run. Second in the NFL. Giving up an average of 76.3 rushing yards per game. Raiders are 25th, giving up an average of 129 rushing yards per game. And then points allowed, both defenses are around the same. Lions are 19th. Raiders are 21st. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, they get Garoppolo back. I mean, you saw Davante Adams in the news again. He said he's happy to be a Raider. So, and that was something that people were, kind of, skeptical about with, what's his commitment to this team. Because obviously it hasn't gone the way that, he would have hoped. Because he wanted to play with Derek Carr, his college teammate, and the Raiders casted him out, got rid of him. They bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. And obviously, Garoppolo doesn't have a big arm like Derek Carr and doesn't have a big arm like, Aaron Rodgers, who Davante Adams played with his whole career up until last year. So obviously, Davante has to adapt to that. But also, the Raiders got to get him the ball. But I talked about this with some people a lot as well. I mean, you got Josh McDaniels, who used to be with the Patriots, Garoppolo, Jacoby Myers. They like their guys. And Jacoby Myers has played really well for the Raiders this year. But you got Davante Adams. That's your guy. That's who you got to go to. A lot. I mean, he's got to get the ball. And for some reason, he hasn't really had an impact. He did drop a touchdown last week. I expect him to have a good game. But we'll see. I mean, he had a good game against the Steelers earlier in the year. Now he's going up against a team that he's familiar with. So, he's kind of had a couple of, weeks where he really hasn't done much. I mean, I think this is a week where he can have a good game. But I just think the Lions, ultimately, they're the better team. I mean, they're going to be playing. The Raiders are going to be playing from behind a lot in this game. And listen, especially because the Lions are coming off of that bad loss against the Ravens. I mean, they're going to want to take their frustrations out on a team that's not very good. And, also the Raiders running the football, it hasn't been good because, I mean, Josh Jacobs, he had his, his best season last year. And this year he really just hasn't been as effective. Raiders have been struggling to run the football. So, I mean, I don't know how much they're going to be running it tonight because, like I said, I think they're going to be playing from behind a lot tonight. So we're just going to have to wait and see how it goes. But, yeah, I mean, right now the Lions are the better team. Raiders are 3-4. They could get themselves back to 500 with this win, but I don't see it happening. I just don't. The Lions are really good at home. And, I mean, the Raiders' offense just isn't great. I mean, I don't think Garoppolo's it at quarterback. I mean, I think Garoppolo's a decent quarterback, but, but I don't know. Crazier things have happened. But the big thing for me here is I need the score to be 34-20. Get the over in the total score, and I win my first week in my spread pool ever. Because listen, I did good in the spread pools. I did good in just picking the game straight up. Might be 3-3 this week in fantasy. 4-2 possibly. Because right now I'm going up against my cousin in my family league, and she has Jahmyr Gibbs, and I have Devontae. So I need Devontae to have a good game. But, I still want to win the game in the spreads with the Lions because, I'm still, behind the leader by a lot. So I'm hoping Devontae has a good game and the Lions, they put up their points and we get it to a final score that's over 52. That's not too much to ask, right? But, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it with the, talking about this game. Obviously, again, more injuries this week, which you just hate to see. Kirk Cousins getting injured, that really just hurts the NFL because he was having a great year. And, getting the Vikings back to 500 was big, but now, who knows what's going to happen with the Vikings. And, other quarterbacks got hurt too this week. I mean, Tyrod Taylor got hurt in his game against the Jets. You're seeing injuries all over the place, and it's just not good. But that's what happens. It's going to continue. But, we're at that midway point in the season. And, before you know, we're going to be in the playoffs. So, but you don't want to rush it. Obviously, we're approaching November. Holiday season is coming up. We got football games on all the major holidays. And, yeah. We're rolling right along with the season, but after this week, once again, the question remains: so who's good? Who's the best team right now? Because now the Chiefs had a bad game, so now everyone's gonna be like, oh, well, now it's this team. It's week to week, but when people get annoyed and they're like, oh, well, last week you said they were the best team, now they lose and now they're not. But the other thing is you gotta have things to talk about. Because you just say, well, this team's the best team, and that's it moving forward. It changes week to week. It really does. And again, this week was another example of that. Chiefs lost, Niners lost again, Cowboys won big, so now everybody's going to be on the Cowboys like, oh, they're back, right? No, they're not. Now, are they a playoff team? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely they are. But do I look at them as a team that's better than the Eagles? No. Now, we're going to find out next week because those two teams will meet in Philly. That's one of the late afternoon games, so that's big. It's a big game. But, we'll see how the Lions play tonight. They get back into the conversation. The Bengals, after they looked like everybody was counting them out, they look good now. The Dolphins, the Bills, how they played on Thursday, they're going to be playing the Bengals on Sunday night. Chiefs and the Dolphins are going to be playing each other. So, it's a week-to-week thing right now. Every team has had one bad loss. So, anyone can be beat. Anyone can be beat. It's all about and the other thing too is you got to look at matchups. How does one team match up against the other? Because we saw the Commanders. The Commanders almost beat the Eagles yesterday. But the Eagles, Jalen Hurts played well, and they were able to win that game. So they could have lost that game. And you're saying, how did the Commanders lose to the Giants, who have one of the worst offenses in football, but they could beat the Eagles. They can hang with the Eagles. It makes no sense. It really does. But that's what happens. How do the Broncos, who got blown out by 70, or not blown out by 70, but they had 70 points scored against them, how do they go from that to beating the Kansas City Chiefs? No idea. No idea. That's what this season is. Jalen Hurts, 4 touchdowns, no picks against the Commanders, but he throws 3 against the Jets. Jets have a good defense, but how do you? And they lose to the Jets. How does that happen? How does that happen? Zach Wilson went 17 of 36 yesterday, and the Jets won. Now they shouldn't have won, but they did. That's just what this year is. That's just what this year is. It's unpredictable. We have no idea what it's going to end up being. We can assume, we could say this team could go, but ultimately, no idea. No clue. Everybody knows nothing. Nobody knows anything. That's how I look at it. And let's see what the coming weeks brings us. And honestly, I like it. I like that we could look at this and say, yeah, I don't really know who's going to make it this year. I have no clue. But yeah, well, like I said, we'll just have to see how the rest of the season plays out. Another week almost over. Tonight, obviously, the last game. And that's pretty much it for me today. I thank you guys all for tuning in. Make sure to like the video, comment, and subscribe, obviously, to both YouTube channels. We'll be back again tomorrow. Same time. And, so that's basically it. Once again, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. And enjoy the game tonight. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.